Alright, we're back and we're going to be doing a demold of the tail. So I cast the wing. You guys saw how involved that was. Once I stopped recording, I actually took the same material, a new batch, mixed up, poured it into the tail mold. So we're going to demold this and take a look at how it cured over the last basically 2 days. It was Friday night I poured it. It's now Sunday afternoon. Yesterday it saw all day in a warm solar oven, if you will. I actually want to build this week a hot box with with some insulation foam and then a 100-watt light bulb to get temperatures up to about 100, maybe 110 at the max. That'll give it a good post-cure and sort of temper the plastic, and then from there I can actually take it and do a little bit more of an elevated post-cure. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to give it a better heat distortion long term. So what happens is with a lot of these thermoset materials, whether they're polyurethanes, whether they're epoxies, if you don't do an elevated post-cure, if this part that is hanging out, if you ship it in hot weather, it can warp. If it's sitting in a room and temperatures get really high, or it gets exposed, it's sitting in a windowsill, it gets hit with direct sunlight, you have the potential for it to warp. It's not stable if you haven't done the post-cure. So the post-cure, in basically basic terms, almost tempers the plastic, tempers the urethane or epoxy, and it resists heat distortion later on in the part's life. If you don't do that, if you just do a room temperature cure, then you have basically what's referred to as very low heat distortion. So these materials, potentially, if you do the proper post-cure, have about 150 degrees Fahrenheit heat distortion. So that basically is going to resist that temperature. But to qualify it, once again, only if you've done the proper post-cure. On these parts, if I can get 120 degrees, this thing's not going to live outdoors. It's not going to hopefully be subjected to extreme temperatures, but it might. And we don't want it to warp, at 100 degrees, because let's face it, on a hot summer day, interior temperatures of a room, or it's in a car, or like I said, even shipping. I've heard lots of stories and seen parts that have shipped. So we're going to demold this, and we'll go more over the hot box and basically the post-curing later on. Let's get to business here. So I really haven't done anything yet as far as demolding it. So what I've been doing is, right here, I've been sort of testing the flashing. I like having a little bit of flashing because it tells me how the materials cure. See if it's overly brittle or something. This is feeling pretty good to me. It's not too brittle. It's stretching before it breaks. If it was still curing, it'd be still really flexible. It's pretty stiff. It definitely could use some elevated temperature to help it cure, but nonetheless, we're going to see what this thing looks like. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on a support structure and do a bit of a post-cure. Alright, so okay, peeling open the mold. Once again, this is sort of that jeweler's cut. You can see here I did some reliefs down the side because before that it was a bit too difficult to demold without it. So just trying to pop everything loose. It's stuck over here. Ah, there we go. Alright, it's slowly but surely breaking loose. Let's see. I've got these pieces here. These are metal, but they're very smooth and they shouldn't damage the silicone. The biggest fear when you're demolding, and if you've got to get in there with tools, is you don't want to damage to the tool, the silicone tool, which is easily done if you're not careful. The tool is nice because it's flexible, so you can stretch it around and bend it this way and that way. You're not going to hurt it, but if I abrade the surface with something like, a sharp, pointy tool, then I could damage the tool, and that'll show up on future parts. Okay, so we're looking pretty good here. So I'm kind of looking through the sides of the parts. Alright, that's looking good. Nice thing about the clear silicone, you can see the part demolding. Gotta be careful here. What actually works really good to help demold parts like this is compressed air and an air nozzle to blast some good high pressure air in there, and it basically just helps force the part out without having to physically wrench on the part. Because I'm being very delicate here, and the material is cured enough to resist a lot of what I'm trying to do, but worst thing I can do is trying to damage the part on demold. Oh man. Alright. It's not so much that it's stuck. It's just the geometry of it being a V-tail. It's just mechanically locked in there to a certain degree. I gotta get a little body English in this one. There we go. Probably looks pretty comical. Fighting with a piece of silicone. Oh man. It actually helped to have a second pair of hands. There we go. Hey, it was that simple. Okay. Alright. So let's see what we got here. Okay, so this part looks pretty good. All this up here is just flashing. I have to be careful on this particular vent here. I don't know if you can see it, but basically there's a little bit of this that's sort of blended into the rest of the tail, and I have to manually sort of grind it, sand this down. If I just break this thing off, it's going to take some of the tip with it. So this one requires a little bit more delicate surgery. This one is pretty straightforward. It actually pops off. I did a little bit more modification over on this side, and I believe when I set up the vents, I think this one just had a little bit more glue on it. So when it took the mold, it ended up with a little bit of a bigger ridge here. So let's find a razor blade. This is pretty easy. Just lightly trimming off the flashing. Stuff is cured pretty good, but I can guarantee, because this is not seeing anything more than that solar hot box you saw, which maybe got up to 80 degrees on that yesterday, on Saturday. but the material itself feels good. It's not brittle, it's not overly flexible, so I feel safe handling it. I'm just going to be careful down on this end. Okay, there we go. So we're removing that piece. So there we go. So what I'll do is I'll come in with my Dremel and just zip this off and then just lightly sand it down. And then when I get to a certain spot, I can just start wet sanding it and then just hand polish it out, and you'll never know that this big lump of a fill gate was there. So there we go. The wing is next. I'm going to take this and do a little bit of a post-cure on it before I demold the wing. I'm in no rush. I want that wing to come out nice, and it doesn't hurt if I leave it in the mold for one more day. The water clears in thin sections are pretty slow to cure unless you accelerate it with heat. Now the downside to curing too fast with the heat is the silicone itself can start to swell, and you can get some strange things happening inside the mold. Basically, kind of the mold can grow, the part sort of stays the same size, and then you start getting some weird imprints on it. So we actually want to take this whole ramp up and post-cure very slow, and it is a slow process, a little tedious, but in the end it's going to stabilize the part without imparting any sort of weird marks on it. And if I set this in a cradle and the material softens with the heat that I'm post-curing with, I've seen it many times before where it'll actually kind of imprint into the part itself. So we want this to be pretty stable, and then we'll go from there. So that's it for now. But this part looks pretty good. A little light polish on the surface, and I can't wait to finish the fuselage mold. That's going to be my next task of this week, and I'll be documenting some of that. All right. So, till next time.